The first game of the season means it's time for the first official game notes of the season, and the first game notes of the season means it's time for the first official depth chart of the season. Yesterday was the first Monday of the 2025 football season, so there were a lot of firsts that happened. We got the game notes, like I said. We had Pat Narduzzi's first press conference of the season, and then the depth chart came out. So lots of little news and notes, things to talk about from yesterday, things Narduzzi mentioned, things we noticed on the depth chart, other things to get you ready for Pitt Duquesne. So let's jump into it. It's season opening game week here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Tuesday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. Hanging out with you today, talking a little Pitt sports to get this week rolling. I mean, yesterday we had our mailbag, so that set the table for the week, but now we have lots of things to talk about with Pitt season opener against Duquesne just a few days away at Acrisure Stadium on Saturday. So the depth chart came out yesterday, and Pat Narduzzi spoke to the media yesterday. We'll talk to players and coaches throughout the week, hopefully the coordinators at some point this week. We'd like to hear from Cade Bell and Randy Bates. We'll talk to Narduzzi again on Thursday. The regular weekly run of show, I guess is what they would call it. I'm looking forward to diving back into the routine of it for the first time in 2025. You know the deal. Go to Panther-Lair.com to get all the Pitt sports coverage you can possibly handle, Panther-Lair.com. And then we have all the video content right here on our YouTube channel. These Morning Pitt videos every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Our weekly live show every Wednesday night at 8:30. We have post-game shows, press conferences, interviews, practice highlights, all those kinds of things, all right here on YouTube. So make sure you like this video and subscribe, and you won't miss any of it. So the depth chart came out yesterday. I can't say there were too many surprises. First of all, we all know the depth chart is, they don't print it out anymore, so we can't talk about whether it is or is not worth the cost of the paper to print it. But we all know that it's tenuous at best. I mean, some things, yes, Eli Holstein, Desmond Reed, Kyle Lewis, Rasheem Biles, probably all of the offensive line. I mean, like, these things are all, yeah, they're starters, but some of these situations where there's 5 running backs listed, you have all these ors, like some of this may reflect a reality that exists. Some of this might, some of these listings might, reflect something about reality or something approaching reality or something tangential to reality. And some just may have no connection to life as we know it. And so we've come to understand that about the depth chart. We understand that about the depth chart. It's always been the case with Pat Narduzzi's depth charts, and it'll likely always be. But there are still interesting things to note, some things that'll jump out here or there. One of the first sort of omissions was Sincere Lee not being on the 2 deep. They listed 9 wide receivers, and Lee, who is a returning productive player from a year ago, is not on there. And that's largely due to injury situation. He got hurt in that Clemson game, a pretty severe knee injury, as I recall, and it kept him out of spring camp and really had him limited during training camp. I think it sounds like, according to Narduzzi yesterday, it sounds like he is recovering more quickly than he did in the past, or than was expected, I should say. And potentially could play if needed, but shouldn't be needed this weekend. So he's unlikely to play. They didn't put him on the depth chart, but it sounds like he will play this year. Now, like I said, you do have 9 wide receivers listed here, including basically all 3 freshmen, Tony Kinsler, Bryce Yates, and Cam Sapp. You have the transfer Deuce Spann, who came in this offseason, Jesse Anderson, who got moved from safety. So you've got all the new guys at receiver, plus, that top 3 that we talked about pretty much for more or less the second half of camp. Kenny Johnson, Raphael Williams, and Blue Hicks. Those guys are all there. Those are the listed starters, which is pretty much what we expected. And then you're filling it out with an interesting cast of characters. Zion Fellerell is the most tenured member of the reserve receivers there, is a redshirt sophomore. Deuce Spann is older, but he's new, just got to Pitt and all that. But, you more or less have the order that you expected. No surprises in the offensive line. It was the group that we pretty much talked about through the last couple of weeks of camp. Jeff Percy at left tackle, Keith Gouvet at left guard, Lenny Cooper at center, B.J. Williams at right guard, Ryan Bear at right tackle. That's what we expect. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if you have to replace someone. I think if Bear goes down or Percy goes down, you have the obvious options there. Giovanni Cooley at right tackle and Kendall Stanley at left tackle. But backup left guard. If Gouveia gets hurt, could it be Jackson Brown or could Kendall Stanley shift in there? Ditto at right guard, where Isaiah Montgomery or true freshman Torian Chester are listed as the backups. Like, who steps in there? If Lyndon Cooper gets hurt, does Ryan Coretta step in at center, or does Keith Gouveia shift over from left guard to center? So there's a lot of hypotheticals you could play out with the offensive line. But for now, I think we're all confident about that starting five. We know who that group is. And with any luck, you won't have to see anyone other than those starting five in situations where, it actually counts, where it's not a blowout or something like that. On the defensive side, when we had the injury, when we talked about the injuries last week, the injuries at linebacker with Jeremiah Marcelin and Jaden Bonsu being out for the year, we talked about how that would affect the depth, and I think we've seen that show up here. Nick Lappy listed as the backup. Nick Lappy, actually, or Abe Ibrahim, listed as the backups at middle linebacker behind Braylon Lovelace. Lappy or Cameron Lindsay also listed as the backup at money linebacker, while Cameron Lindsay is also listed as the backup at star linebacker. So, you've got guys who are going to play at different spots. Lappy and Lindsay, potential backups at the money and the Mike. Lindsay is the backup at the star. It just cut into the depth of that position group so much to lose two top reserves in Marcelin and Bonsu. It really cut into the depth, and it's going to make things thin, if nothing else, dicey if they have another injury there. They're just going to have to keep guys like Biles, Lewis, and Lovelace on the field a lot. Going through the secondary, I don't think there's any real surprises to see Tamon Lynam and Rashad Battle listed as the starting corners. Shadarian Harrison didn't get listed as a starter or as an starter, but he's gonna play a lot. Sean Lee made the cut as a true freshman. Rashawn Murray's up there. They're gonna have their rotation of 4 or 5 corners. We'll be interested to see how they end up working out the snaps there, who they play and who they prioritize, but I think they've got some really good corners. We've talked about that group a lot. Defensive line, there's an starter at 3 out of the 4 positions. And that's, I think, oftentimes a position group where you see the most ors, either in the starters or the depth, just because they rotate so much. I mean, I don't know if they really want to lock themselves into this guy is starting or that guy is starting when they know they're all going to play. And probably as much as any position group, if not more than any other position group, the defensive line gets sorted out through the week. Who practices well? Who knows what they're doing? Who has a good week leading up to the game? Those end up being the guys who get on the field to start the game, and those end up being the guys who play the most throughout the game. And so, I think we see those ors a lot. And I said, they don't want to lock themselves into a starter. None of this is written in stone. None of these guys are going to be locked in as starters. I would wager that the 11 guys we see listed as the starters on offense will start. Holstein, Reed, Johnson, Poppy Williams, Blue Hicks, Jake Overman, Percy, Gouveia, Cooper, BJ Williams, and Barrett. Like, I would bet those 11 start. And on defense, I think probably your back 7 is more or less locked in right now. Lewis, Lovelace, Biles, Brookins, McIntyre, Battle, and Lynam. But the defensive line is up for grabs, and we've seen crazier things happen than some of these guys that seem to be locked in end up not getting a spot. So every week the depth chart comes out. Every week we talk about it. We talk about what moves were made and shifts and things like that. But we know it's all pretty temporary. One of the most interesting things to me about the depth chart, and I did a little research to back this up, there are 10 true freshmen listed on the 2 deep between offense, defense, and special teams. That includes Trey Bukowski, the starting place kicker, and I don't know how to pronounce his name, Cayman Tijerina is listed as the backup punter and backup holder. He's a true freshman as well. But 10 true freshmen throughout the offense, defense, and depth chart. That's the most true freshmen to make a start of season depth chart under Pat Narduzzi. I did. I went back and looked this up. The previous most, they had 7 true freshmen on the depth chart, the first depth chart of the 2023 season, and they had 7 true freshmen on the depth chart, the first depth chart of the 2017 season. Oh, also 7 in 2020. So 3 other years, 3 out of Narduzzi's first 10 years, they had 7, maxed out at 7 true freshmen listed on the depth chart. There's always been at least 2. 2022, Rylan Gandy and Sam Vanderhaar were the only true freshmen listed on the depth chart. Last year, there were 3. who were listed. And again, I'm just looking at the first two deep of the season. I couldn't go through 120 or 130 game notes to find out, throughout the season. We just go with the first one of the season. And by that comparison, 2025 has set a new high water mark with 10 true freshmen listed on offense, defense, and special teams. What's interesting is when you look 2015 through 2024, so the first 10 seasons of the Narduzzi era, there were 45 total true freshmen listed on the first official two deep of the season. Out of those 45, 22 of them redshirted. And I think that's interesting that it's almost a 50-50 split. But part of that is there were a lot of specialists who were listed as true freshmen. Like none last year, but in 2023, Sam Carpenter was on there. Like I mentioned, Sam Vanderhaar in 2022, Caleb Junko in 2021. In 2020, Ben Sauls, Cam Guess, and Byron Floyd were all on the first depth chart of the season. 2019, Sam Scarton and Jared Campbell, who was a punter, they were both on the depth chart at the start of the 2019 season. 2018, there were two guys whose names you probably don't remember. 2017, there were three. 2016, there was one. And so there were 14 specialists who were listed on the first depth chart of the season as true freshmen. 12 of those 14 redshirted, like almost all those guys. The only ones who didn't were Cal Automitis in 2017 and Sam Vanderhaar in 2022. So if we take specialists off the list, and even though like Trey Bukowski is going to play this year as a true freshman, but if you look in Narduzzi's first 10 seasons, offense and defense, he had 31 true freshmen listed on the depth chart, the first official depth chart of the season. Only 10 of those guys redshirted. Now that's interesting to me. Two out of three true freshmen on offense and defense who showed up on the first depth chart of the season played enough to not redshirt. So when you're looking at 10 guys this year, the 10 freshmen, Mason Heinschel, Jakirian Turner, Tony Kinsler, Bryce Yates, Cam Sapp, all three freshman receivers, Torian Chester, Emmanuel Taylor, the linebacker, Josh Guerrier, who we talked a lot about, Sean Lee, and then the two specialists. If the trends hold, and actually take the specialists out, so you have 8 guys on offense and defense. If the trends hold, what's 2 out of 3 when you're talking about 8 guys? Like 6 of them? 5.5 of them? Like more than half of these guys. Anywhere from 5 to 7, I would say, of these freshmen are going to play enough to not redshirt. Mason Heinschel, Jakirian Turner, Tony Kinsler, Bryce Yates, Cam Sapp, Torian Chester, Manny Taylor, Josh Guerrier, and Sean Lee. I forget when I did my 5 most likely freshmen to not redshirt. Let's see if I wrote my list down. I should just know it off my head if I actually believe it, right? My list. Jakirian Turner, Tony Kinsler, Josh Guerrier, Sean Lee, and Mason Heinschel. So I got 5 of the 8 guys. I did not list Torian Chester or Manny Taylor or Cam Sapp or Bryce Yates. But I got all the others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, there's 11 this year. I was like, why is my math not adding up? There's 11 true freshmen. I've been talking about 10. There's 11 true freshmen listed on the first depth chart of the season. 9 of them are on offense and defense. So 2/3 of them will be 6. Okay, that's easy enough. Odds are, if trends hold, at least 6 of those guys will play enough to not redshirt. So keep an eye on that. We'll see if that comes to fruition, if it actually pans out that the true freshmen get out there. True freshmen play in 2025. I think there's probably a pretty good chance. So I don't know if much else really stood out. I mean, I think what'll be interesting about this game this week, as far as the depth chart goes, is just seeing, I mean, how deep they get into it. I mean, no disrespect to Duquesne. We'll talk about Duquesne and their motivation this week, and how, I think they'll give Pitt everything they've got, as most of these teams do, right? But I mean, in your FCS game, you're hoping to play as many guys as you can. You should be able to play as many guys as you can. And so if that comes to pass, that they're able to sort of empty the bench, so to speak, and dig into the depth chart, it'll be interesting to see where they go, how they rotate, which quarterback do they go with. Cole Gonzalez makes sense, but Mason Heinschel, I think there's some logic. You could come up with some good rationale for playing him as well. The rotation, through defensive tackle, what kind of linebacker setup, or groupings they go with out there. How deep do they go into the receivers? They list 7 cornerbacks on this depth chart. Are all 7 going to play on Saturday? When they get to the offensive line, if they put their second team group out there, is it just how it's written on this depth chart, or do they make some moves there? I think there's a lot. It's going to be interesting to see, obviously, what the starting lineup looks like on Saturday, but even more so, or just as much, I would say I think it's going to be interesting to see how they work the depth. If they try to get a lot of guys out there and get a lot of guys on the field and get some reps for them, who do they go with, and how do they break it up? So that'll be interesting to watch. Obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on that on Saturday when we're all at Acrisure Stadium, and we'll take as many notes as we can and try and figure out as much as we can and report it all at Panther-Lair.com. So make sure you check out the site, Panther-Lair.com. We'll have lots of content all week to get you ready for Pitt Duquesne, some of the big storylines, some other interesting things Pat Narduzzi talked about yesterday, because I didn't get time to get to some of the other ones that I wanted to talk about today. But that'll give us more to talk about throughout the week. We'll break down offense, break down defense. We'll have a mailbag on Friday, another mailbag. It's a 2 mailbag week. How about that? This is a fancy one. This is a big one. So we'll have lots of stuff for you right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And, in the meantime, I hope your week got off to a great start yesterday. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.